Still saying I don't know nothing or she's more better than me? If you want to stop making these common mistakes that are killing your fluency, then this video is for you. These 10 errors are holding you back from sounding like a native speaker. Let's fix them. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're here, you're probably serious about improving your English, and that's fantastic. But let's be real, even the most dedicated learners stumble sometimes. We've all been there, right? Now, why is this important? Well, think about it. Clear communication is the key in today's world. Whether you're aiming for the dream job, connecting with people from different countries, or simply wanting to feel more confident in your daily conversations, nailing your English is essential. But those tiny mistakes, they can create confusion. They can make people judge your English level incorrectly. Imagine saying something that is grammatically incorrect or mispronouncing a word, and it completely changes the meaning of your sentence. It can be frustrating and even embarrassing, so let's stop that from happening. In this video, we're going to cover 10 of the most frequent mistakes I see learners make. And more importantly, I'm going to give you easy practical tips to fix them. We will break down everything from those tricky grammar rules to those sneaky pronunciation pitfalls. And don't worry, we will keep it fun and engaging. We're talking about things like double negatives, those confusing articles, and even those silent letters that sneak into words. I will show you exactly how to avoid these traps and sound like a pro. By the end of this video, you will have a clear understanding of these common errors and the tools you need to fix them. So, grab a notebook, get ready to learn, and let's dive in. Before we get started, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of my English learning tips. And if you're already part of the community, welcome back. Also, I would love to know what's the one English mistake you struggle with the most. Share it in the comments below and maybe I will address it in the future video. Alright, let's get right into it. We are going to start with double negatives. Basically, a double negative is when you use two negative words in one sentence and ends up cancelling each other out, often leading to a positive meaning, which is the opposite of what you intended. Think of it like math. Negative times negative equals positive. But in English, that positive isn't usually what you're going for. Let's look at some examples. You might hear someone say, I don't know nothing. Now, if we break that down, don't know is negative, and nothing is also negative. So technically, it sounds like you know something. Or how about, I can't hardly hear you? Can't is negative, and hardly is also negative. So it's like saying you can almost hear them, when you actually mean you can't hear them at all. Sometimes you can find those phrases in movies. For example, someone can say, I don't want no trouble, which sounds like I want trouble. And that is probably not what the person meant.
I don't want no trouble.
I don't want no trouble.
I don't want no trouble.
So how do we fix this? It's actually pretty simple. Just use one negative word per sentence. Instead of I don't know nothing, say I don't know anything or I know nothing. And instead of I can't hardly hear you, say I can hardly hear you or I can't hear you. See the difference? Now, to understand why using can't and hardly together is a mistake, let's look at the meaning of words like hardly. These are called adverbs of frequency, and they tell us how often something happens. Some of them have a positive meaning, while others have a meaning that is close to negative. As you can see, words like hardly ever and barely ever already mean almost never. They have a near negative meaning. So if you use another negative word like not with them, it cancels out the negativity and changes your intended meaning. So remember this scale. If you're using a word that is already low on this scale towards the negative end, you don't need to use another not in your sentence. And for the movie example, instead of I don't want no trouble, you should say I don't want any trouble or I want no trouble. Let's do a quick practice. I'm going to give you a sentence and you will tell me how to fix it. Ready? How would you correct that? The correct versions are they didn't see anybody or they saw nobody. Remember, one negative word per sentence. It's a simple rule, but it makes a huge difference. A common trap is using hardly, scarcely, or barely with another negative. These words already have a negative meaning, so they don't need another one. So avoid phrases like I can barely do it. Just say I can barely do it. And remember that sometimes, even though it is grammatically incorrect, you will hear people using double negatives in casual conversations or in movies. So now you know that is a mistake, and you can understand the correct version. Alright, that's double negatives for you. Easy to fix, right? Now let's move on to our next common mistake, which is double comparisons. This is when you use two comparative or superlative forms together, and it's just grammatically redundant. Think about it, you're already comparing something, so you don't need to double up on the comparison words. The classic example is more better. Better is already the comparative form of good, so adding more is unnecessary. Another one is most tallest. Tallest is already the superlative form of tall, so most is extra. You might also hear things like more faster and more easier. And just like with double negatives, you can find those in movies too, even though they are not correct.
Hey, I think it'd be much more better if you put your hands up.
Treatment will tell us more faster.
I am the Quack, world-renowned thief of the most highest skill.
That is why it's much more easier to find in level 2.
The fix is simple. Choose one comparative or superlative form. Instead of more better, just say better. Instead of most tallest, just say tallest. And for the movie example, instead of this is more easier, you should say this is easier. Quick practice time. How would you correct this sentence? The correct versions are this is the cheapest option or this is the most inexpensive option. Be careful with adjectives that already end in er or est. You don't need to add more or most to them. Words like better, worse, older, youngest, they are already in the correct form. Remember, clarity is key. Avoid those double comparisons and your English will sound much more polished. Okay, that's double comparisons down. Let's move on to our next common mistake, which is incorrect subject-verb agreement. This is all about making sure your verbs match your subjects. If your subject is singular, your verb needs to be singular. If your subject is plural, your verb needs to be plural. Seems simple, right? But it's a common trip-up. The most basic example is with is and are. You wouldn't say they is happy. You would say they are happy because they is plural. Similarly, you wouldn't say he go to the store. You would say he goes to the store because he is singular. Notice the s on the verb. It gets trickier with more complex sentences. For example, you wouldn't say the dogs doesn't want it. You would say the dogs don't want it. Or the dog don't want it. You would say the dog doesn't want it. Sometimes you can hear someone say, for example, my friends comes to town, which is incorrect. So, how do we fix this? The key is to identify the subject of the sentence and make sure the verb agrees with it. So, the correct version is, my friends come to town. If subject is I, you, we, or they, you usually use the base form of the verb, go, see, eat. When using helping verbs like do does, am is are, was were, and have has, ensure the auxiliary verb agrees with the subject. Let's practice. Correct this sentence. The correct version depends on the context. If you mean the team members as individuals, it is correct. Be careful with collective nouns like team, family, group. They can be singular or plural depending on whether you are talking about the group as a whole or the individuals within it. Also, watch out for sentences with phrases in between the subject and the verb. These phrases can make it harder to find the true subject. And like with other mistakes, you will find examples in movies, but now you know how to correct them.
Find your baby and tell her she don't have to do that.
It doesn't work that way.
That means they's gonna destroy stains.
Okay, that's subject-verb agreement. It takes practice, but you will get it. Let's move on to our next common mistake, misuse of articles. Alright, let's talk about articles, a, an, and the. These little words can be surprisingly tricky for English learners. The biggest problem is knowing when to use them and which one to use. Let's start with a and an. These are indefinite articles, and we use them when we are talking about something general or non-specific. The rule is a goes before the words that start with a consonant sound, and an goes before the words that start with a vowel sound. It's about the sound, not just the letter. So, it is a cat, a house, but an apple, an hour. Even though hour starts with H, it has a vowel sound. A very common mistake is to use a or an with plural or uncountable nouns. For example, it is incorrect to say a knowledge or an information. You should say knowledge or some knowledge and information or a piece of information. Now that, it's the definite article. We use it when we are talking about something specific or something that's already been mentioned. For example, I saw a person yesterday. The person was sitting under a tree. We used a when we first mentioned the person and the tree, and then the when we refer back to that specific person. Here's how to get it right. Think about sound for a and n. Is the next word starting with the vowel sound? If so, use n. Is it specific or general? If it's specific, use the. If it's general, use a or an, or no article at all, as we will see. We don't use the with most countries, languages, holidays, or words like home, work, jail, church, and college. So, instead of I'm from the India, say I'm from India. And instead of I speak the English, say I speak English. And instead of I'm going to the work, say I'm going to work. Okay, your turn. How would you correct this? The correct versions are I need water or I need some water. Water is an uncountable noun, so we don't need a with it. We can use some. One trap is getting confused with general statements. For example, you wouldn't say the dogs are animals. If you're talking about dogs in general, you would say dogs are animals. Also be careful with places. We usually don't use the with names of countries, streets, and cities, unless it's a specific, well-known place like the UK or the US. Alright, articles can be tricky, but with these rules, you will be a pro in no time. Let's move on to our next common mistake, wrong prepositions. Prepositions are used to show relationships between nouns, pronouns, or phrases, and other words in a sentence. The problem is they are often idiomatic, which means there is no real logic behind them. It's just how English works. One very common mistake is confusing depend on and depend from. You might hear someone say, it depends from the weather, but that's incorrect. It should be, it depends on the weather. Another frequent error is using listen without to. You will hear things like listen music, but the correct phrase is listen to music. Similarly, People often mix up wait on and wait for. I'm waiting on the bus is wrong. It should be I'm waiting for the bus. And also people sometimes forget to use the preposition. For example, saying he's afraid heights instead of he is afraid of heights. So, how do we get prepositions right? Unfortunately, there is no magic formula. It mostly comes down to memorization and practice. The best way is to learn common prepositional phrases. Pay attention to how native speakers use them. Read and listen to a lot of English content. When you're learning new verbs, also learn the prepositions that go with them. For example, depend goes with on, listen goes with to, and proud goes with of. Use flashcards or apps to practice these phrases. Repetition is key. Let's try now. How would you correct this sentence? The correct version is, she is proud of her achievements. One trap is trying to translate prepositions directly from your native language. This rarely works because preposition usage varies significantly between languages. Another trap is assuming that all similar verbs are using the same prepositions. They don't. For example, look at is different from look for. And like with other mistakes, you will find examples in movies, but now you know how to correct them. Alright, prepositions can be tricky, but with practice, you will get the hang of them. Let's move on to our next common mistake, pronouncing silent letters. Alright, let's talk about silent letters. They are there in the spelling, but they don't make a sound. This can be super confusing for learners. The classic example is the K in knife or no. You don't pronounce it, it's just silent. Another common one is the B after M, like in comb and lamb. And don't even get me started on W before R, like in right or wrong. There are also silent letters at the end of words, like the N in autumn and column. And remember the letter T? It can be silent too. If you want to dive deeper into the letter T, you can check out my previous video about the letter T. So, how do you know which letters are silent? Unfortunately, there aren't always clear rules. It often comes down to memorization. The best approach is to pay close attention to how native speakers pronounce words and build your vocabulary carefully. When you're learning new words, make a note of any silent letters. Practice saying the word aloud to reinforce the correct pronunciation. Let's try now. How would you pronounce this word? The correct pronunciation is psychology. The P is silent. One trap is assuming that all letters are pronounced. English is full of surprises. Another trap is trying to apply rules that don't exist. There are patterns, like K and words, but many silent letters are just exceptions. Don't be afraid to look up the pronunciation of new words. Most dictionaries and online resources will show you how to say them correctly. And like with other mistakes, you will find examples in movies, but now you know how to correct them. Okay, silent letters can be tricky, but you will get the hang of them with practice. Let's move on to our next common mistake, incorrect stress patterns. This is all about where you place the emphasis in a word. In English, stress is crucial for clarity. If you stress the wrong syllable, it can completely change the meaning or make it hard to understand. For example, the word colleague. Many learners stress the second syllable, colleague, but the correct stress is on the first syllable, colleague. Another common one is comfortable. People often struggle with pronunciation of this word, but the correct stress is on the first syllable, comfortable. And don't forget about words that change meaning with stress. Present can be a noun a gift, or a verb, to give a speech, and the stress changes accordingly. A present, noun, to present, verb. This is especially true for words that are both nouns and verbs. Record, noun, and record, verb. Sometimes you might hear people say infamous, but the correct pronunciation is infamous, with the stress on the first syllable. So, how do we get stress patterns right? The best way is to listen carefully to native speakers and practice. Use a dictionary or online pronunciation tool that shows you the stress pattern. Record yourself saying words and compare it to a native speaker's pronunciation. Practice saying words aloud, paying attention to the stress. Let's try one. How would you pronounce as a verb? The correct pronunciation is address. The stress is on the second syllable. One trap is assuming that all words have the same stress patterns. They don't. English stress is very unpredictable. Another trap is relying on the spelling. Spelling doesn't always indicate stress. Pay attention to word families. Words that are related often have similar stress patterns. For example, beauty, beautiful, and beautifully all have stress on the first syllable. Stress patterns are tricky, but practice makes perfect. Let's move on to our next common mistake, vowel sound confusion. This is a huge challenge for many English learners because English has a lot of vowel sounds and they can be very subtle. A small difference can change the entire meaning of a word. A classic example is the difference between ship and cheap. Ship has a short I sound, and cheap has a long E sound. If you mix this up, you could say something very different from what you intended. Another common one is the difference between bad and bad. Bad has a short E sound, and bad has a short E sound. Sometimes you can find those mistakes in movies. For example, someone can say, I want to leave by the ocean, when they should say, I want to live by the ocean. So, how do we get these vowel sounds right? The key is to pay close attention to the small differences and practice a lot. Use a phonetic chart or an online pronunciation tool that shows you different vowel sounds. Many dictionaries include phonetic transcriptions. Listen to native speakers and try to imitate their pronunciation. Record yourself and compare it to the native speaker's pronunciation. Practice minimal pairs. These are pairs of words that differ by only one sound. For example, ship and sheep. This helps you focus on the subtle differences. Let's try one. How would you pronounce these two words? Live has a short I sound, and leave has a long E sound. One trap is assuming that all vowels are pronounced the same way as in your native language. English vowel sounds are often different. Another trap is not paying attention to the context. The surrounding sounds can influence how a vowel is pronounced. Don't be afraid to slow down and exaggerate the sounds when you're practicing. This can help you hear the differences more clearly. Vowel sounds can be tough, but you will master them. Let's move on to our next common mistake, confusing similar words. These are words that sound alike or have similar spellings, but they have completely different meanings. This can lead to some pretty awkward situations if you mix them up. A classic example is advise and advice. Advise is a verb, meaning to give recommendations, and advice is a noun, meaning recommendations. Another common one is affect and effect. Affect is usually a verb meaning to influence, and effect is usually a noun meaning a result. And don't forget about there, and there. There indicates a place. There is a possessive pronoun, and there is a contraction of they are. Also, lose and lose are often confused. Lose is a verb meaning to not win or to misplace, and lose is an adjective meaning not tight. Sometimes you can find those mistakes in movies. For example, someone can say, "The weather will affect my plans," when they should say, "The weather will affect my plans." So, how do we get these similar words right? The key is to pay close attention to the context and learn the specific meanings of each word. Use a dictionary or online resource to look up the meanings and example sentences of each word. Pay attention to the part of speech. Practice using the words in sentences. Write your own examples to help you remember the differences. Create flashcards or lists of these confusing words and review them regularly. Let's try one. How would you correct this sentence? The correct version is, "I need your advice on this." Advice is the noun, which is what you need in this sentence. One trap is relying on the sound of the word. Similar sounding words often have very different meanings. Another trap is not paying attention to the context. The surrounding words can help you determine which word to use. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification if you are unsure of the meaning of the word. People are usually happy to help. And like with other mistakes, you will find examples in movies, but now you know how to correct them. Similar words trip us up, but you will get the hang of them. Let's move on to our next common mistake, spelling errors. Alright, let's talk about spelling mistakes, and specifically homophones. These are words that sound the same but have different spellings and meanings. And boy, can they cause confusion. The most common culprits are there, and there. It's easy to mix them up, especially in writing. Another frequent error is confusing to, and to. To is a preposition and a part of an infinitive. To means also or excessively, and two is the number 2. And don't forget about your and your. Your is a possessive pronoun, and your is a contraction of you are. Also, its and its are often confused. Its is the contraction of it is, and its is the possessive form of it. Sometimes you can find those mistakes in movies. For example, someone can write, "You're going to love this," when they should write, "You're going to love this." So, how do we get these right? The key is to understand the meanings and context of each word. Pay close attention to the spelling and meaning of each word. If you're unsure, look it up in a dictionary or online resource. Practice writing sentences using each word correctly. This will help you reinforce the differences. Use mnemonic devices or tricks to help you remember. For example, there, they are. If you can substitute they are in the sentence, use there. Let's try one. How would you correct this sentence? The correct version is, "They're going to the store." There is the contraction of they are, which is what you need in the sentence. One trap is relying on spell check alone. Spell checks sometimes miss homophone errors because the words are spelled correctly, even if they're used incorrectly. Another trap is not proofreading carefully. take your time and read your writing aloud to catch any errors. Don't be afraid to ask for feedback from a native speaker or a language tutor. And that's it. We've covered 10 of the most common English mistakes that learners make. Remember, everyone makes mistakes, but by being aware of them and practicing, you can improve your English significantly. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. They are a part of the learning process. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more English learning tips. Also, let me know in the comments which mistake you found the most helpful. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.